Hi, I'm Rob Sylvan, and in this session, it's all about using Lightroom Classic and the Lightroom Cloud together. This is the third rail of Lightroom. This is the thing nobody wants to touch because, admittedly, it is way more confusing than it needs to be. And so I've set up a situation where I'm going to connect my Lightroom Classic catalog, which is my home base for all my photography, with the Lightroom Cloud. And I'm just going to be using my phone as the cloud device, but you could be using it with a tablet, multiple tablets, multiple devices, even additional computers. So when we think about these two Lightrooms, right? We have Lightroom Classic, which is the original version of Lightroom. And it existed for, almost 13 years now. And it lives on either a Windows or Mac computer. All right, so that's Lightroom Classic. Back in 2017, Adobe split off what was a mobile-only app called Lightroom Mobile and made its own little ecosystem, including a brand new app for Mac, Windows, and even Chromebooks that all use the similar Lightroom Cloud mobile interface. What sets these two Lightrooms apart is that the Lightroom Cloud stores all of the original photos in the Adobe Cloud server, whereas Lightroom Classic stores everything locally on your either internal hard drive or external hard drive. And Adobe kind of for a few years now has said, just pick one or the other. And there's wisdom in that because it does keep your life a lot simpler. But the downside of that is you miss out. There's some really cool benefits from using Lightroom Classic and Lightroom Cloud together. You get all the benefits of Lightroom Classic, including the ability to print, which you can't do from the Lightroom Cloud. Plus you get all of the benefits of having your photos accessible across all your devices. I don't know about everybody, but I think it's probably pretty true that you probably have a phone. You probably have a tablet, as well as a computer if you're into photography. And it's really nice to be able to take out your phone wherever you might be, or take your tablet on location and have access to some or potentially even all of your photographs. So by connecting your Lightroom Classic catalog to the Lightroom Cloud ecosystem, you can start to take advantage of both of those workflows. Now, there are some caveats, there are some hurdles, there are some pitfalls potentially to avoid. In setting up my demo, I kind of built in a few pitfalls that we're going to present along the way so that I can show you how to resolve them if that should come up for you. If you've never set this up before, it'll be a lot easier for you than what I'm going to show you because you won't have to undo some of those things. But you may at some point encounter them. So I want you to have the benefit of that experience. All right. I also show you how you can do all of this with just the 20 gigabytes of cloud storage that comes with the Creative Cloud Photography plan. So most of the people that I know in my Lightroom world have the Creative Cloud Photography plan, which is $9.99 a month. You get the latest version of Lightroom Classic and Photoshop, and you can install the Lightroom Cloud app on all your devices. But the big but is you only have 20 gigabytes of cloud storage. But everything I'm going to show you in this session, you can do entirely with that 20 gigabytes of cloud storage. Because the secret is, if you sync from Lightroom Classic, the smart previews don't count against your storage. I'll say that a few times throughout this so it really sinks in, but that's the whole key to making this. All right. So there's some really cool things in this session. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get some good stuff out of it, and I'll see you at the end. I want to start here on my phone and talk about the mobile version of the Lightroom Cloud app to get started, and then we'll switch over to my laptop and look at Lightroom Classic, get the two synced together and go through that whole workflow and make sure you understand what's happening during each step in the process. But if you haven't already, you want to head over to your App Store on your device, whether it's the iOS App Store, the Google Play Store, whatever your device is. Download and install the app, and then once you install it, you're going to log in with your Adobe ID and password. the same Adobe ID and password you use on your computer in the Creative Cloud app. That Adobe ID is what ties together your devices through the cloud. Now, as you can see, I already have 41 images that I've imported into this Lightroom mobile app. These are uploaded to the cloud. As you can see, this little cloud icon here tells me that all of these photos have been synced, and backed up means they're uploaded to the cloud. All right, so nothing is happening, nothing's in process right now. These are all visible on my device, but the actual full res photos are in the cloud. That's the key to understanding this whole process. Any photo that you import into any of the cloud-based apps, whether it's on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, any photo you bring in through the import process on that device, the full res photo goes to the cloud and takes up some of your cloud storage. So if we look here at my cloud storage right now, I have a 100 gigabyte plan here because this is part of the Teams plan that I'm in for this account. So I get 100 gigabytes. If you have the all apps plan, you also have 100 gigabytes, but the photography plan comes with 20. But as you can see, with these 41 photos, full res photos, I still have plenty of room, plenty of storage. I might be taking up maybe 3 or 4 gigabytes right now with those. You also want to take note, depending on what kind of data plan you have and how you're going to use your device, you might want to turn off use cellular data. That way, if you're out and about and you're using the camera built into the phone app, you may not want to use your data plan to upload the full res photos to the cloud. If you're on Wi-Fi, it's going to sync as long as this app is open. You can also configure it to only download smart previews. We'll talk a little bit more about smart previews when we switch over to Lightroom Classic, but basically, as it says here, they're reduced resolution, meaning they're smaller in pixel dimension, smaller in file size, and they stand in for your full res photo as a proxy, and they're plenty big enough for sharing on social media, certainly for viewing on your mobile device, and even doing some basic editing. All right, so here in the mobile app, in this album section, we can see there are 3 albums. Albums in Lightroom Classic world are collections. Magically, they get transformed and called albums once they hit the cloud. When you're in the mobile app or in the cloud version of the Lightroom app on your computer, if you want to organize your albums into groups, they call them folders here. That's a little confusing, but if I wanted to create a folder to store some of my albums in, maybe I'll call one My Family. So now I have a folder, currently empty, and 3 albums. And if I want to move that family album into the folder, I can tap that 3-dot menu, come over to Move To, then choose that folder I just created and hit Move. And now that album now inside of this My Family folder. While collections or albums, depending on which app you're looking at the time, will sync between Lightroom Cloud and Lightroom Classic, the folders do not sync. So if I wanted to have an organizational structure that was the same in both Lightroom Classic and here in the Lightroom Cloud, I'd have to recreate that structure in both applications. Because in Lightroom Classic, what is called a folder here in Lightroom Cloud land, that's called a collection set in Lightroom Classic. So when we switch over to Lightroom Classic, I'm going to bring this back up and we're going to talk about this so you can understand this, how this works. This is not ideal. I'm not saying this is good. I'm just saying this is how it is. And so we'll move forward on that, but I'll leave this so you can see how it doesn't sync over there. Now, while we're in the mobile app, I want to point out one more thing. I'm not going to get into the editing aspects of using the mobile app, but I do want to point out if you go to the Learn tab here, there are tutorials built into the app. All right, so let me go back to my photos here. So we're going to go over to Lightroom Classic and look at what's happening here. So at this point, this Lightroom Classic catalog is not synced to the cloud. How do we know? Well, for one reason, in the catalog panel is this special collection called All Synced Photographs, currently showing 0. Now, it could be synced, and I just may not have any images in the cloud, it still would be 0. But if I come up to the identity plate, as I move my cursor over this little disclosure triangle appears. And if I click on that, that opens what's called the Activity Center. And here in the Activity Center, sync with Lightroom. So this is the key to enabling Lightroom Classic to start syncing with Lightroom Cloud. It's telling me that I have 100 gigabytes of cloud storage, and I'm currently using almost 4 gigs of that space. It's telling me here sync is off. Lightroom will not sync photos with other Lightroom clients. All right, so if I'm ready to start syncing between Lightroom Classic and Lightroom Cloud, I just need to click on Start. Let's see what happens. I click Start. Now I have another catalog synced. You have to keep in mind that you can only sync a single Lightroom Classic catalog to the cloud. If I choose to sync this catalog, the photos I've already synced will be added to this catalog. All right, let's see what happens when I do that. I'm going to say yes, sync this catalog instead. All right, so now I've turned on sync. So right now we can see that it's starting to sync some of those images, and some of those images coming in have GPS information. I can enable that. As that sync is happening, we can see here in all synced photographs, it's now up to 27, 28. Now, if we look here in my folders panel, 2 devices just appeared, like hard drives appeared, and they both have the name of my phone, my iPhone on it. When you enable syncing, any device that has the mobile app on it and has photos in it will appear as if it's its own volume, its own drive. We're going to talk about how to manage that here in a moment. So there's up to 41 images. That's how much I knew I had in that one account because I had another catalog synced and I switched to syncing this one. Any photos that were in that cloud account are going to come over as well into here, because it's playing it safe. It doesn't want to just delete images just because I synced a different catalog. Now, if I come down to the collections panel, a new collection just appeared called From Lightroom. All right, and if I open up that From Lightroom collection set, we could see there is a camera roll, family, and trips. Those are the same 3 albums that we looked at in the mobile app, and they have come down here, they've synced over. Same names. Here they're called collections. There they were called albums. And they got placed into this From Lightroom collection set. I did not create this. Lightroom Classic created that all by itself. Those photographs that were in each of those albums came over here as synced collections as well. So if I expand these 2 other devices here, and it's showing my MacBook Pro as its own device, why did that appear? Well, that's because I also had the desktop app and I imported some images in through that. So each one of these devices represents a cloud application that had some photos imported into it. I find this to be a less desirable way to manage your images that come in from the cloud. So I want to show you a better way to do that involves going into Lightroom Classic's preferences. Because I'd like to keep all of my photos together regardless of where they're coming in from, what device they're coming in from. I'd like to keep them either in my internal hard drive with my other imported photos, or moved over to this external hard drive, which is currently offline. So obviously I can't move them if they're offline unless I want to bring that drive online. So for now, I'm going to leave that drive offline. You can check out my other session where we talk a lot about moving photos between drives. But what I want to do is get rid of these devices and just have the photos that are coming in from the cloud land in with my existing photo structure, my photo folder structure, and have these devices go away. So to make that happen, I need to go up to the Lightroom Classic menu. This would be under the Edit menu on Windows, but under Lightroom Classic, we're going to go to Preferences. And then here, under the Lightroom Sync tab, we can see what's happening. The key setting that we want to look at is under Location. So we'll let that just keep busy here. But what I want to do is specify a location for Lightroom synced images. Now you need to decide for you, where do you want these to go? Some people like to keep their photos from their mobile device separate. That's totally fine. In my other session, I said, however you organize your photos, as long as it meets these 2 criteria, it's all good in my book. One of the criteria is that it has to scale into the future. The other is it has to make sense to your brain. So for me, in my brain, I like to keep my photos all stored together. So I'd like to designate this imported photos folder as the location for these synced images so that when they're downloaded from the cloud, they just land right here, not in some other separate device. So I'm going to click on Choose. Now I know for demo purposes that happens to be right here. It's not where I normally keep it, but we're going to keep things together for now. And I like to use subfolders formatted by capture date. I gave my reasons for why I like to do that in my other session as well. And I'm going to use the same structure as I use for importing images directly into Lightroom Classic, which is a 4-digit year followed by the year, month, and day. Now that I've got that configured, I'm going to close out of here, and it didn't change anything here. And that's okay, because we can manually do that. Now, what I want to do is have my photos that are here join up and live in this inside of this folder structure, so that I don't have to have all these different devices just sitting here. Now, the ones that are empty, I'm just going to remove them. There's nothing in them, and I don't need to keep them sitting here on my folders panel. All right, so I got rid of those two ones from my phone because those were empty. Now all I want to do is take these photos and I'm going to put them into a folder over here. So under imported photos, I'm going to right click and choose create folder inside. I'm going to call this demo because these are my demo photos. And click create. All right, and so now I have this demo folder here. I'm going to select all of those photos and just drag and drop them. Now, even though this NH MacBook Pro looks like it's a separate hard drive, it's just actually on this drive. It's just kind of buried down in the operating system. And so all I really did was move them from this folder on this drive into this folder on this same drive. If I right click on this and choose show in Finder, we're going to see that's where that folder is. It's just buried down inside of my Lightroom folder, inside of this mobile downloads LR data file. That's where they were. I just wanted to get them out of there. All right, so now that that's empty, I'm going to right click on that and choose remove. And now my folders panel is the way that I like it. All right, so now I just have my imported photos folder as my parent. I have one folder here by year. I have my new demo folder, and that's fine. So now the big change is any new photos that I import are going to follow that folder structure that I designated on the preferences. So let's switch over to my phone and see how that works. All right, so here I am on my phone, and what I want to do is import a photo, and I want to import it into what I call my camera roll. So on my mobile device, this is just a convention that makes sense to my brain, is I created an album, also known as a collection, and I called it camera roll, and any photo I bring in to this device, I bring in through this particular album. So within this album, I'm going to tap on add, and I'm going to go to my camera roll. Now, on my camera roll are mostly pictures that I just took with my phone. Might also be screen captures. All right, picture of my dog. I've been baking a lot these days. All right, so all these photos that I have captured on my device, I want to bring them in to the Lightroom Cloud app. Now, all of these photos are full res photos that are sitting on my camera roll, and when they are imported, the next thing they're going to do is start uploading to the cloud. Now, at the bottom here, you can see the little symbol here for video. You can import video into the Lightroom Cloud app. I'm not going to do that because I don't recommend doing it, because while video does work within the Lightroom Cloud environment, it uploads the full resolution video file to the cloud too, and sometimes video files are quite large. That's going to eat up a lot more of your storage. So I don't use the Lightroom Cloud app to import video to transfer it to my device. I just plug my phone directly into my laptop and import the video that way. So I want to point out that you can import video, but it requires additional storage space, and video doesn't sync from Lightroom Classic to the cloud, so you won't actually see the video files in the all synced photographs collection that we were just looking at. So it's just a little bit fiddly. So I would avoid it for now. So I have just photos selected, and I'm going to tap on add. And now those photos are going to be imported into this app. We could see that they're now uploading and importing in process. Likewise, I could pause that here if I needed to. All right, so now my camera roll has jumped up to 56 images. So those photographs were all imported into here, including screen captures. I do a lot of screen captures for tutorials and things, and so I often will import them into the Lightroom app And then what happens? Well, they transfer right over to my computer, and then I can use them in my work. So not everyone needs screen captures, but because Lightroom and Lightroom Classic both support PNG files, it's a nice workflow for me. All right, so while that is uploading, we're about almost 50% on that. I'm going to switch over to Lightroom Classic and see what's happening on that side. So if we look over here at the camera roll collection that I created, there are those images that we just imported starting to stream in. If I go up to all synced photographs, likewise, we're going to see them starting to appear here as well. And if we look in the folders panel, now all of a sudden I'm getting these additional year-based folders with photos in them, because Lightroom Cloud is saying, here are some photos that you imported into one of the cloud apps. Lightroom Classic is downloading these and putting them in folders based on the year, month, and day that they were taken. I find this to be a lot more useful than just having a device with my device's name on it sitting here and all the images being dumped in a single big folder. This way it breaks them out across all different structures. Now, you'll see here that I have some folders that have a year, month, day, and then some human understandable description next to it. I cover how I do that in my other session, but I'll just point it out because it's super easy. And ultimately, that's what I do with all the photos that come in, however they come into my folder structure here. So let's say for this one here, I might just right click on this, gives me the option to rename, and I'll just call this screen capture. Not super descriptive, but just for this demo purpose, that's what I would do for each one of these. Is if this was from a particular event, a place, a location, people, I would just come over here and to say, okay, how am I going to find this again? And I can go through that pretty quickly and just modify all of these folders and give them something more interesting. Now, the folders are here on my internal hard drive. The photos that I imported into the Lightroom Cloud app on my phone went full res up into the cloud and now are downloading the full res photos right here into my Lightroom Classic catalog, including any edits that I might have done in the cloud too. All of that information just syncs right over and lands back here in my Classic catalog. This gives me the ability to have Lightroom Classic being my home base for all of my photography, regardless of what device I use to capture it or what device I use to import it or ingest it into my system. So I'm not going to spend more time organizing these folders because in Lightroom Cloud land, folders don't really matter. Right? What matters are collections, aka albums. If we look a little closer, I'm just going to zoom in here. To the left of these three collections that synced down from the cloud, this little icon indicates that these collections are synced. If you look at the thumbnails for these particular photos, we see this little sync icon there, which tells us that these photos are also synced. Right? So if we look at a photograph that isn't synced, if I come back up here to my folders panel, I'll grab some photo here. No sync icon. All right, so this one hasn't been synced over as opposed to all the ones in my camera roll synced from the cloud. So if I wanted to create a new collection here in Lightroom Classic and have that synced to the cloud, I could do that too. And here's the important part. And this is when it comes back to thinking about our space, right? The amount of storage that we have in the cloud. I mentioned that I have 100 gigabytes earlier. I still, even with those few photos that we've brought in, haven't quite hit the 4 gigabyte mark yet. So it's not like I'm running out of space, but I want to be able to manage that little bit of space over time. I use the Lightroom camera app. So right inside of the Lightroom mobile app is a camera. This is a really useful camera. I find it's become my default camera. I'm not going to go too much into using the camera, but it has a bunch of different modes, including an HDR mode that shoots in RAW. It shoots 3 raw images and merges them together for you and gives you a raw image. A long exposure mode, a depth capture mode, your regular professional mode for controlling all the settings. It's a really, really useful camera that shoots in RAW and has a lot of really cool features. All the photographs I capture with that Lightroom camera are automatically uploaded to the cloud and automatically downloaded right into my Lightroom Classic catalog. If I am out with my DSLR, I'll bring the camera connection kit and I'll import photos right from my memory card, bring them in, and it makes it really easy if I say wanted to take a photo and share it out to social media. So having the ability to quickly disseminate images via text, email, Instagram, Facebook, however you like to get those images out, this combination gives you that ability to do it very seamlessly. But what if I had photos that were in Lightroom Classic and I wanted those photos to be able to be shared on social media, or if I wanted to text it to somebody, something like that? Well, let me come over here to this folder of photos that aren't synced. All right, and this was from an event I was at in Colorado, and I was talking to these guys who were working it, and they were working hard, and some of them wanted me to share some of the images I took, so I had gotten their email, and maybe I wanted to share these out. So I'm going to take this group of photographs, and I'm going to create a new collection. Now, it doesn't matter where I put this collection now, but you do want to come up with an organizational structure for your collection sets and all that. But for now, I'm just going to add this collection inside of the From Lightroom one, just to kind of keep them together inside of the collections panel. So I right-clicked on the From Lightroom collection set. I'm going to call this one Rodeo. It's already going to be included within the From Lightroom collection set. It's going to include the selected photos. I don't need to set it as a target collection because I'm not going to add any additional photos to this collection right now. And it's already marked to sync with Lightroom Cloud. Cool. So all I had to do was select a bunch of photos, give that collection a name, click Create, and now this Rodeo collection was just added. It has the sync icon, and now the syncing is happening again. And what's happening is the photos that were in this collection are all marked to sync now. These are NEF files, so they're full resolution RAW files here in Lightroom Classic. Here's the big distinction. Any photo that you sync from Lightroom Classic to the cloud is only ever uploaded as a smart preview. It is not possible for Lightroom Classic to upload a full resolution photo to the cloud. And the most important part of that is that smart previews synced from Lightroom Classic do not count against your storage. So all of these photographs here, even though they're RAW files, original files, they will become available to view, edit, and even export out to social media or whatever in a smaller size, the smaller size of the smart preview, but they're not counting against my storage. So I could literally sync thousands of images from Lightroom Classic to the cloud, and it will not count against my 20 gigabytes, 100 gigabytes, whatever my total storage amount is. The only photos that count against my storage are the ones that are synced directly from one of the Lightroom Cloud apps. So if I switch back over to my phone, there's the Rodeo collection that I created. Now it's an album. There are the photos that I synced over already appearing. And if I wanted to just do some edits to these, I'll just do something that makes it kind of visible here. Let's grab a preset that will help make it stand out somehow. Here we go. All right, so I've just did a quick couple of edits here. Now, the edit that I made is also syncing up to the cloud. That edit then syncs back over to Lightroom Classic. And so eventually that photo is going to update here inside of Lightroom Classic, and we'll be able to keep track of that editing too. So if I sync these over and went, oh no, I forgot I wanted to make this change to this photo before I shared it out with whoever it was, I can actually make those edits inside of the Cloud app, knowing that that edit is going to sync right back down here to Lightroom Classic. Super useful, and we're really just scratching the surface of how this can help you in your workflow. Now, what we also need to do over time is start to manage that storage space. So let's imagine that I only had 20 gigs maybe, and I wanted to clear everything off that was in the cloud so I could still have room to import new photos into the Cloud app while I was out at the rodeo or wherever I was, so I can bring them in and have those photos land back here inside of Lightroom Classic. I'm going to come up to the All Sync Photographs collection set. Not collection set, but collection, for lack of a better word. So here are all of the photos that are synced. What we can't tell from here inside of Lightroom Classic is which of these photos exist as a smart preview in the cloud and which of these photos exist as a full resolution photo in the cloud. The reason we can't tell here in Lightroom Classic is because in Lightroom Classic land, these are all full resolution photos. These are all full resolution photos that are downloaded and exist here in my catalog. All Lightroom Classic knows is that they happen to also be synced to the cloud. So if I want to be able to manage that, knowing that smart previews don't count against my storage, so all these ones that I just synced over, these aren't taking up any storage space in the cloud at all. And I just wanted to remove the photos that were full resolution photos, I need to come up with a workflow for managing that. But here's how I try to keep it really simple. Over in my mobile device, I mentioned I have my camera roll. So my starting point, if I'm bringing in a full resolution photo, is to bring it into this camera roll album. I don't add it to any other albums just yet, and I'm going to show you why. But I use this as the vehicle to bring them up over and find them into Lightroom Classic. So when I come down into Lightroom Classic, because over time you might forget which images came in at what particular time. So all the new photos come landing eventually inside of here if they're being imported into a mobile app. But I know that all of these photos are full resolution photos in the cloud because they came in when this whole process started. So what I want to do is take these full resolution photos out of the cloud, but I want to be able to add them back to this collection when I'm done. With the assumption being that I'd still like to be able to have these photos available for viewing on my phone. Because that's one of the most common things we do, right? We're out somewhere, we're with friends or family, and you pull out your phone to show them some pictures of where you were, or of your family, or your dog, or whatever it is that you want to share. Because the photos that we bring in through the Lightroom Classic doorway don't count against your storage, you could have literally thousands of photos available on your phone and have them not be taking up any space on your phone. Because I use this workflow, my actual camera roll on my actual device is usually almost empty, because as soon as I import the photos from that camera roll into Lightroom mobile app, I delete them off my camera roll. That keeps a lot of room free on my device for podcasts and music and whatever else that I'm going to do, apps and games and all that other kind of stuff. So here's what I want to do. I want to be able to have these photos eventually end back up onto Lightroom Cloud so that they're visible, but I don't want them to be taking up any storage space, and I want to keep all the edits, and I want to have all the full resolution photos managed here in Lightroom Classic. How do I do all of that? Now I want to point out, how can we know? It's easy here because we're just getting started, but how, if we hadn't seen all this, how could we know which photos are in the cloud full res and which ones are just smart previews? Well, for that, we want to look at opening up the Lightroom Cloud app for desktop. This is basically the same app that's on my phone, but here it's for a Mac. Same app exists for Windows. Same app exists for Chromebooks too. So when I open up the Lightroom Cloud desktop app, I see those same albums and I see that folder. Within the cloud apps, these folder organizational structures do sync. The only place this folder does not sync back to is Lightroom Classic. Within the cloud ecosystem, everything is kept in sync. Lightroom Classic is the outlier when it comes to the structure made by folders and albums. But here, if I go to all photographs, here we can see it's like looking at all synced photographs. These are all the photographs that have been brought into the cloud, whether they were synced from Lightroom Classic, like this one, or whether they were imported full res into either this app here or into my phone. But what this app has that Lightroom Classic does not, and you can't even find this on the mobile app either, this is the only place that this little special feature exists, is this filter for sync status. Inside of the desktop app, there are two grid views, all right? This is the photo grid, and then we have the square grid. The square grid gives every thumbnail a square, the same size, but it has an icon that appears underneath it. This particular icon here tells me that this photo is synced and backed up. That means that it's synced across all devices. I should say it's synced from this device to the other devices. May not have landed on another device just yet. And backed up. By backed up, it means the full resolution photo is in the cloud. This little kind of hashtaggy gray icon here, that means that no original is backed up to the cloud, but a smart preview is available. That means, right, it's synced from Lightroom Classic. It's only a smart preview that's in the cloud. And so if we turn on our sync status, we can actually see which photos are synced from Lightroom Classic. So only those are smart previews currently in the cloud. If I turn that filter off and choose synced and backed up, all the rest of these photos show as synced and backed up. That means all of these are full res in the cloud photos, taking up my storage space. So this is how you could tell which photos are taking up your cloud storage and which ones are not. If you come here to sync status and go to synced and backed up and you see photos, those are taking up your cloud storage. If you come up here and that shows empty and you just have photos that are synced from Lightroom Classic, then none of those photos are taking up your cloud storage. That's the state I want to get to, because I'm trying to do this in a way that anyone with even 20 gigabytes of cloud storage could take advantage of this workflow. So if I switch back to, I'll just turn this filter off for now, and switch back to Lightroom Classic. I'm going to go up to my All Sync Photographs collection. And what I want to do is select all of the photos that I know are in the cloud, full res. And I'm going to deselect just these guys here because I know those are just smart previews. But I want to point out what's going to happen because this is a common problem and I want you to avoid it. So I'm going to do it to myself first, and then you'll know not to do this. So if we look back at, we have this camera roll collection, we have one for family, one for rodeo, and one for trips. And I am here in All Sync Photographs. And I've got all of those photos that are found in all of these different albums / collections. If I press the delete key, I get this little message. 69 photos will be removed from all synced collections and from Lightroom Photos on Creative Cloud, but will not be deleted from the desktop catalog. Okay, what does that mean? That means that all the selected photos right now are going to be removed from all synced collections. That means all of these collections here that have any of these photos in it, they're going to be removed from these albums / collections, as well as being removed from the Creative Cloud storage. That's part of what we want, but we may not want to remove photos from these other collections, right? That's potentially a problem. That's called an own goal. Perhaps you might not want to do that. But they will not be deleted from the desktop catalog. The desktop catalog means Lightroom Classic. This is a very kind of obtuse way of saying all of these photos will be removed from the cloud, but they won't be deleted from Lightroom Classic. But they will be removed from any synced collection because, hey, we're removing them all from the cloud, right? So how do we avoid that? Well, that's the key. You want to be in control of the photos, and that's why I only put things into the camera roll to start from, because that way I know they're not being removed from any other special collection that I may have made. And you've got to be on top of that part to manage it. Here's one way to do this. Inside of this particular album here for trips, what I can do is right click on this and choose duplicate collection. This collection is not synced. This one still is, right? Stay with me here. Rodeo, we're going to ignore that for now because we know that is just smart previews. Family, I'm going to right click on that and choose duplicate collection. This one, not synced. This one is. Great. And then we have our camera roll here, and I'm going to right click on that and choose duplicate collection. So why did I do that? Well, now I have unsynced versions of each of these collections so that I don't lose their organization, the way they're grouped. I don't want to lose that. I just want to get them. I just want to get the full res versions out of the cloud. So I'm going to come up to all sync photographs, and let me just sort this by added order. See if that makes it a little bit easier. Yeah, it does. And I'm going to come down to here. All right, select all of those guys. All right, so I don't have my rodeo one selected. I just have all the rest. I'm going to choose delete. Now it says it's going to remove them from the Creative Cloud, but will not be deleted from the desktop. All right, so it is going to remove them from the sync collections, but that's okay because we took that advanced step. I'm going to click OK. All right, we left that guy there, but that's all right because that one seems to be having a problem anyway. So now when I come down here, there's my original synced camera roll, empty. Family, empty. Trips, that one. Somehow that one's missing. Let's just remove that guy. So what do I want to be able to do? Well, these albums here / collections are still synced to the cloud. They're just not containing any photos right now. If I switch over to my phone, we could see those numbers are going down. Eventually they'll, except for the rodeo one, see here, they're starting to zero out. So that means they're being removed from the cloud. That's our goal. That's what we want. So once that syncing has completed, if I come up over to here and I go to my sync status, synced and backed up, all right, eventually this is going to zero out once these all get cleared out. Now the cloud does have a trash that I could recover if I made a mistake. I could recover them back into the cloud if that was part of the problem. But what I want to be able to do here is recreate my albums that are synced so that the smart previews are going up to the cloud. All right, this one here has a missing one. We're going to just pretend we don't see that because I don't know what the problem is. I don't want to waste time on that. I'm just going to add these photos back to the Trips album. Go to my family copy. I'm going to add these back to the family album. Go to my camera roll, copy, and add them back to the camera roll. And now my unsynced copies have served their purpose. I no longer need those. I'm going to remove them. And now all of my synced albums have been restored to the photos that were in them originally. And the smart previews of those are now syncing up to the cloud. The full resolution photos, those were never changed. Those were just sitting on the hard drive right where they came in. Didn't even need to bother with the folders panel. All I was doing was moving photos between were they synced or not. And by removing them from being synced, that removes the full resolution versions from the cloud, but keeps the full resolution versions here in Lightroom Classic. Then I can come over to here and change this over to synced from Lightroom Classic. And that soon will be all of the photos as they get synced back up as smart previews up into the cloud. Now, the speed in which all of this happens obviously depends on your internet connection and no gremlins in the mix. Seems to be a couple photos that are, I don't know, getting a little jammed up, but eventually that will sort itself out, I'm sure. If I look over to my phone, all right, we can see that those same thing is happening here. All those photos are coming back up to live here in the cloud as smart previews. As long as I can take any of these out. All of these photos here that are just being synced from Lightroom Classic are no longer counting against my storage. And it'll take a little while for that storage amount to update here. All right. But eventually that's going to come down and I'll be able to manage that space. Now I do have my deleted files here that I could restore if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just take this and permanently delete them all just so you can see how I can totally remove those from the cloud. They're not even, I can't even recover them anymore. But the smart previews are still here. And the smart previews are totally editable and changeable and will sync back over to classic. I could see that they're still here. And if I was curious or worried about the full resolution photo, if I right click on this, I can choose go to folder in library. And that tells me where it lives on my hard drive. So the full resolution photo is still fine. It's just still sitting on my hard drive, and only the Smart Preview is synced up to the cloud. All right, so that's the mechanics of the workflow. But what I want to show you is one of the other benefits. All right, so let's go to this rodeo collection that is synced here. So how about instead of me sending one of the photos, in an email or even a text message to one of these guys, I want to just provide them with all of these photos in an album that they could view online. Because these photos have synced up to the cloud, are in a collection here, I have this option to make this collection / album public. So if I click on make public, it's going to generate a link, a URL, to this particular album in the Lightroom cloud. All right, and so it starts off with this kind of short link. And if I click on this link, it will actually open it in a web browser. If I control click or right click, open the contextual menu here, I can copy that link to my clipboard, which would be convenient for pasting in an email or something like that. But I'm going to open it up in a browser so you can see what happens. That's the full long URL or link. That's why it's nice to have that short link. And so here are all of those photos that are just Smart Previews sitting in the cloud. But once I share this link out, the Smart Previews are a really decent size for viewing and sharing, and certainly plenty for sharing with people like this who just wanted to see photos from that particular event. If I tap on this eye icon here, we can see the file name of the original, the capture date. This little speech bubble actually would allow for comments. Now, if I'm logged in, as I am here with an Adobe ID, I can type in a comment. Now, obviously I wouldn't be commenting on my own images here, but I want you to see how this works. I can type in a comment, and because I'm logged in with my Adobe ID, that's going to show up here. Now, you don't need an Adobe ID to view the photos in a public gallery like this, only to comment or click the little heart to like the image. So if I just wanted to share this out with someone and they didn't have an Adobe ID, that's totally fine. They could totally see the images and click through the gallery and see what's visible there. You'd only have to have the Adobe ID if you wanted that level of interaction. They could even play a little slideshow. Click through that. It's pretty cool. So that's just from Lightroom Classic, all right? This collection originated in Lightroom Classic. The photos I imported Lightroom Classic. All I did was sync this collection to the cloud, and then I was able to share out a link to view this entire gallery with somebody who just had the link to that I emailed to them, that I texted to them. Maybe I shared it on social media, however I disseminated that particular link. Inside of Lightroom Classic, that's kind of the extent of the control we have over these shared galleries. So this is another reason why it's useful to have the Lightroom Cloud desktop app. And if you notice, while I was doing that, this little comment panel is only useful when you have photos that are synced, really. And that's when the comments come on down. So there's my comment that I typed on that photograph, synced right back here to my Lightroom Classic catalog, and the like that I applied to it synced there too. So if I share this out with these folks and I say, hey, if you have an Adobe ID, you can leave comments and tell me which one you'd like me to send you a print or whatever you want. What I've done for family sessions, portrait sessions, is I've created this type of a collection, shared the link with them, and I create an Adobe ID and password that I give them. Adobe ID is just associated with an email. It's totally free. So I just have an email from my mail server that I set up and a simple password that I create. And I just give them that password and Adobe ID and say, here, log in with these credentials, go through the gallery and just click the heart on anyone you like, or leave me a comment if you have a question or something. And all that information syncs back to me, and I can use that information to further things along with them. Works out really well. It would be nice if they didn't have to log in, but that's how it is, right? Got to make the best of it. So if I wanted to control that gallery a little bit more, if I come over to the Lightroom desktop app here, and I open up the contextual menu here, I have my share and invite option. Now I have some additional controls. I could set it to invite only, and now I could send people an invitation to view this. That way it's not public anymore, it's by invite only. I could even set it up so that someone can contribute. All right, maybe you go on vacation with friends and you want to create an album, then invite them, and then they can contribute. But if I leave this set to anyone can view, I can grab the link, I can share to social media. I can also change some things in terms of how the display looks, the theme that goes along with it. I could change the title and author. I could even allow JPEG downloads. I could show metadata, and if there was location information, if there was GPS information associated with the photos, I could show that too. I don't know that these have that, but I'll turn these things on, and I'll click on done here. And if I switch back to the web browser and just refresh this, and so if I look at on this eye icon here, now we have some additional metadata that displays because I turned that on, but this doesn't have location information, so that won't be visible here, unfortunately. But I could choose to download because I turned on download JPEGs. And so now I have a way to share these images out, have some interaction, and even if I choose, allow an easy JPEG download from that gallery. So it's a pretty useful function. You can even download the batch of them all at once in a nice little zip file if that's useful to you too. So everything about this particular gallery, from syncing it from Lightroom Classic, you can do that entirely without involving the cloud app. It's only if you want to control some more aspects of the entire display that you would need and find useful in either the desktop app or within the mobile app. You can also access those share and invite options within the mobile app here too. All right, the same settings that we looked at in the desktop app. So having the cloud app on one of your devices gives you additional abilities to controlling and configuring the interactivity there. Back here in Lightroom Classic, the big thing I want you to take away from all of this is knowing how to set up sync, all right? How to manage that sync and manage that storage over time, controlling the information flow, so to speak, of between collections and albums. I want to note that that little yellow icon there, that just signifies that a comment was made on one of the photos within that particular album or collection. All right, so that can be useful too. But I also, I didn't mean for this to happen, but it's happened, so I'm going to take advantage of it and see how this works out. See how we seem to have syncing photos? We have some photos that seem to be stuck, and that makes me wonder what's going on there. Can we try to fix that? So this is what I'm going to show you what you can do. So if you get a situation where it seems like you have some photos that just seem to be stuck syncing for some period of time, if you open up this preferences, go to Lightroom Sync, hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt key on Windows, and you'll see this option to rebuild sync data. This is going to rebuild the little database that is controlling the sync here. It does require you to restart Lightroom Classic, but I'm going to see if doing this will resolve whatever is fouled up in this little situation here. Tries to warn you it could take a long time. I don't think it'll take too long because I don't have too many photos involved here. And through the magic of editing, you won't have to endure it anyway. So I'm going to click on Continue and close out of Lightroom Classic. Lightroom Classic comes back. Now, when it first comes back, go up to the Activity Center and you're going to see that the sync is paused. You want to turn sync back on and it's going to run through its paces here and hopefully clear out whatever is stuck. All right, so after it finished its little process, it seems to have cleared up whatever was fouled up in the works there. So I'm going to switch back over to the desktop Lightroom Cloud app and make sure that it's all happy with the changes and things that we made. All right, so there's all the photos still visible. If I come up to my sync status here and choose synced and backed up, all gone. All right, so I've managed to successfully remove all of the photos from the full resolution photos from the cloud and managed to put them all back as smart previews. So they're all still there as a smart preview. That's how you can manage your cloud storage over time and still have all the photos available across all of your devices. Now, one thing I'll just, before we kind of close out here, I'll point out is that I don't want to have Lightroom Cloud desktop app downloading photos to my drive. So if I click on this cloud icon and down on the settings icon here, I'm going to come over to my local storage. And this is where you can control how much space is being used locally by this particular application. Now it will have a cache, right, for storing the thumbnails and things that we see there. But we could set this cache to be a certain percentage of your remaining disk space. And it's set pretty low. But if you wanted to reduce that even further, you go right ahead and turn that down a little even more. Especially if you're only using this as kind of a terminal to see what's in the cloud and what's not. You don't really need to have a whole lot if you're not doing lots of editing and managing that way. Don't check the boxes for storing a copy of Smart Previews. Don't check the box for storing originals. If you leave those unchecked and reduce this cache down as far as you're comfortable, this app isn't going to take up much space on your system, right? And that's the goal for me. The way I'm using it, I don't want Lightroom. I want to be able to use its tools, but I don't want it to be taking up space. I want Lightroom Classic to still be my main home base for doing all my photography. This is just one more tool to help me manage it, manage what's in the cloud. If the functions that I showed you in here were in Lightroom Classic, I wouldn't need this app at all. It's only that Lightroom Classic doesn't have this sync function, and Lightroom Classic doesn't have the additional tools for controlling the layout and access for share and invite. Those are the two main things, main reasons for using the desktop app. Okay, hope that makes sense. All right, so here we are back in Lightroom Classic. Syncing is complete. I've got stuff in the cloud. I am ready to add more collections if I want to. And I don't normally keep everything under this from Lightroom, but I'm just trying to keep it simple here. Feel free to organize your collections and collection sets any way you want. But remember how I mentioned that the folder in the Lightroom Cloud app here, My Family, that doesn't sync over? And that's true, it doesn't. All right. So if I wanted to kind of mirror that structure that's in the Lightroom Cloud in Lightroom Classic, I can right click on this from Lightroom, create a collection set, call this My Family, and now I could take that family collection and drag and drop it into that collection set. And now I could start to mirror that same structure that's in the cloud as is here in Lightroom Classic. If that just helps you the way you conceptualize it, by all means, go ahead and do that. One last tip, because I just can't stop giving a little more tips here. In the collections panel, there is a microscopic magnifying glass, which is so ironic that the icon is a magnifying glass, because you need a magnifying glass to see that particular icon. If we click on that icon, you can filter the collections panel to show only synced collections. So if you had multiple collections in lots of different places, not grouped so nicely as mine are here, and you just wanted to see all of your synced collections, you can turn on this filter and it will show you only collections that are synced. Super helpful. Keep that in mind. So that's why you don't have to be too worried that all of your synced collections don't have to all be in one place. They can be in all different other collection sets as you need, as your brain makes sense of it. And then just turn that filter back to all, and you'll see all of your other collections and collection sets again. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. As you could see, there were a few things I had to work through. I hope that your experience is a lot smoother and you don't have to encounter those things, but now you'll know in case you do. All right. So if you want to learn more, head over to Lightroom Killer Tips. I've been blogging there for a couple of years. I have a lot of posts on the Lightroom Cloud and Lightroom Classic and using them together. I did also write this book, which dedicates 3 chapters to using Lightroom Classic and the Cloud together. So if you're into books, check that out. But you can definitely reach out to me on Lightroom Killer Tips. Lightroomers.com is my own blog. Find me on social media, and I'm really happy to help you out. So take good care and good luck.